The large room was silent. Too silent. Ambassador Taemin stood at the center of the Galactic Council chambers, his dark eyes looking at each alien face around him. The 12 species that ruled the galaxy sat in their special chairs, waiting for his words. Humanity withdraws from all galactic affairs effective immediately, Taemin said. His voice was calm and quiet. Do not contact us again. The words hit the room like a bomb. No one moved. No one spoke. The Velkari representative, Zeftar, clicked his claws nervously against his chair. The sound echoed in the huge chamber. 3 days ago, everything had been different. The Council had voted on humanity's request to expand to new star systems. Humans wanted to build colonies on 12 worlds that other species said were worthless. Dead rocks, they called them. Places with strange energy readings that made most aliens feel sick. The vote was simple. 11 species voted no. Only humans voted yes. Humans are too dangerous, the Thessian speaker had said. They grow too fast. They learn too quickly. They make us all nervous. Their technology advances at an alarming rate, added the Krillian representative. Yesterday they had simple ships. Today they have quantum drives that we cannot understand. What will they have tomorrow? Taemin had listened to every word. He did not argue. He did not get angry. He simply took notes on his small device and nodded politely when others spoke. But then came the Rigel crisis. The star called Rigel had thrown out a massive solar storm. The energy wave was heading straight for Rigel 7, a human colony world with over 200,000 people living on it. Men, women, children, families who had built their lives on that distant world. The humans asked for help. They needed ships to evacuate their people. They needed medical supplies for the radiation sickness that would come. They needed emergency shelters that could protect against the stellar radiation. We must discuss this properly, Council Leader Vexitra had said. Emergency aid requires careful consideration. We cannot rush such important decisions. People are dying, Taemin had replied quietly. Every hour we wait, more will die. The proper procedures must be followed, Vextra insisted. We will vote on this matter in 3 days. 3 days. Taemin had asked for 3 hours. The Council gave him 3 days. When the vote finally came, it was too late. The solar storm had hit Rigel 7 like a giant fist. The colony's shields had held for 16 hours before failing. Emergency bunkers had protected some people, but not enough. Not nearly enough. 100,000 humans died while the Council debated proper procedures. Taemin had received the final death count during the emergency aid vote. His hands had not shaken as he read the numbers. His voice had not broken when he announced that evacuation was no longer necessary. We understand where we stand, he had said simply. Now, 3 days later, he stood before them one last time. Ambassador Taemin, Vextra said, his voice worried. Surely we can discuss this. Humanity has been part of the Council for 50 years. You cannot simply leave. We can, Taemin replied. And we are. But the trade agreements, clicked Zeftar. The technology sharing, the communication networks you maintain, what about those? Taemin's expression did not change. Find someone else to maintain them. There is no one else, whispered Dr. Mira of the Thessian Science Institute. Your people built most of our quantum communication systems. Your engineers designed the trade route security protocols. Your scientists' gun will no longer be available, Taemin finished. He bowed deeply the way humans always did when showing respect. Even now, even after everything, he was polite. The human delegation thanks the Council for 50 years of cooperation. The way he said cooperation made everyone uncomfortable. It sounded like he meant something else. Taemin turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. Wait, called Council Member Yildana of the Morphic Collective. What about your colonies? Your trade ships? Your diplomatic posts throughout the galaxy? Taemin stopped at the door but did not turn around. All human assets will be withdrawn within 48 hours. All human personnel will return to Earth? Space. All treaties and agreements are void. You cannot just disappear, Bexitra said, standing up from his chair. Humanity has responsibilities. Commitments. You have monitoring stations in 17 systems, trade agreements with 40 species, defense pacts with had, Taman corrected. We had those things. We no longer do. He walked through the door and was gone. The council members sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Finally, Zeftar spoke. He cannot be serious. Humans would never abandon their colonies, their trade networks, their scientific research stations. But even as he said it, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Human ships were powering down and departing from every system. Space stations that had operated for decades were going dark. Research outposts were being abandoned. Trade vessels were returning to human space. Within 6 hours, every human diplomat in the galaxy had delivered the same message to their host governments. Humanity withdraws from all galactic affairs. Do not contact us again. Within 12 hours, human space was sealed. A barrier of unknown energy surrounded every human star system. Ships that tried to approach were turned away by automated messages. This space is no longer accessible to Galactic Council member species. Please do not attempt further contact. The messages were polite, as always, but they were final. Dr. Mira stood in the empty council chamber, looking at the spot where Tai Min had stood. Around her, technicians were discovering that communication networks throughout the galaxy were beginning to fail. The elegant quantum relays that connected distant worlds were shutting down one by one. What have we done? She whispered. But there was no one left to answer. The humans were gone and they had taken their knowledge with them. The galaxy suddenly felt much larger and much more dangerous than it had just one day before. Outside the windows of the council chambers, the stars looked the same as always. But Dr. Mira knew that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had lost something important, something they had never fully appreciated. They had lost their quiet guardians, and they were only beginning to understand what that truly meant. 3 months had passed since the humans disappeared. Dr. Mira stood in her laboratory on Thessia Prime, staring at a wall of broken data streams. The quantum communication network that connected half the galaxy was failing, piece by piece. Status report, she said to her assistant. 17 more relay stations went offline yesterday, the young Thessian replied. The outer rim is now completely cut off from the core worlds. Trade ships are reporting that their navigation computers cannot connect to the Galactic Positioning Network. Mira rubbed her forehead. 3 months ago, she had been studying ancient civilizations. Now she was trying to understand technology that humans had built and maintained for 50 years, technology that was dying without them. Ma'am, her assistant continued, I found something strange in the old records. Show me. The hologram displayed maintenance logs from the past 5 years. Names scrolled by. Engineer Boram, Technician, Jeho, Specialist Minjung, all humans, all quietly working on systems throughout the galaxy. I never realized, Mira whispered. Look at this. 73% of all communication relays. They maintained nearly 3/4 of our entire network. But why? Her assistant asked. Why did they do so much work for us? Mira did not answer. She was looking at another file, a personal log entry from Captain Boram, dated just 1 week before the humans left. Personal log, Captain Boram, monitoring. Station Delta 7, another quiet day keeping the quantum storms away from the Velkari shipping lanes. They never ask what we do out here. Maybe it's better that way. Some knowledge is too heavy for people who just want to live in peace. Quantum storms? Mira's assistant asked. What are quantum storms? Mira's blood went cold. She opened another file, then another. Slowly, a picture began to form. For 50 years, humans had been quietly managing threats that other species never even knew existed. Get me the Galactic Infrastructure Database, Mira ordered. All of it. I want to see everything humans were involved in. It took 6 hours to compile the data. When it finished, Mira stared at the results in shock. Humans had been maintaining 45% of major trade route security. They operated the early warning systems for solar flares in 37 systems. They had built and maintained the quantum barriers that protected inhabited worlds from cosmic radiation. "This cannot be right," her assistant said. If humans were doing all this, why did no one know? Mira found her answer in a file marked Quiet Contribution Protocol. It was a human document written in simple words that any species could understand. "We believe that protection should be invisible. People sleep better when they do not know about the dangers outside their windows. We take the dangerous jobs so others can live peaceful lives." The document was signed by Admiral Do Hyun of the Baia Human Space Force. Across the galaxy, other people were making the same discoveries. On Krylia, trade officials realized that human ships had been quietly escorting merchant vessels through dangerous space. The humans never asked for payment. They never asked for recognition. They simply appeared when pirates attacked and disappeared when the danger was gone. On Valkyrie, historians found records of human science teams working in worthless asteroid fields. The fields that humans claimed were full of valuable minerals that could only be extracted with special techniques. Techniques that other species found too dangerous to attempt. But now those asteroid fields were revealing their true nature. They were not mines. They were monitoring stations. Each one watched for threats coming from deep space. Captain Yoon Seo's final log entry was found on an abandoned station in the Kepler void. Day 847 of monitoring duty. The sensors detected another Void Hunter probe today. Destroyed it before it could report back to its pack. The Council worlds sleep safely tonight, never knowing how close death came to their doors. Void Hunters. Mira had never heard the term before. She searched the Galactic database and found nothing. Then she searched human databases that had been left behind when they evacuated their stations. What she found made her hands shake. Void Hunters were entities that existed outside normal space. They ate reality itself, leaving nothing behind where worlds and stars had been. For 300 years, humanity had been fighting a secret war against them. How many? Mira whispered as she read report after report. The answer was in Admiral Do Hyun's classified files. 50,000 human soldiers had died fighting Void Hunters. 50,000 men and women whose names were never spoken in council chambers, who died protecting people who never knew they existed. Meanwhile, on the edge of the galaxy, the first signs of disaster were appearing. Without human maintenance, the quantum barriers that protected the Nexarian Empire's outer colonies were failing. Space itself was becoming unstable. Captain Krelthon of the Nexarian Navy sent desperate reports to his superiors. "The barriers around the Epsilon sector are gone. Our ships cannot approach. Long-range scans show nothing. The colonies are not destroyed. They are simply not there anymore. 3 entire worlds had been erased from existence. Not blown up, not invaded, not destroyed. Erased, as if they had never existed at all. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions. Representatives from all remaining species gathered to discuss the growing crisis. We must contact the humans," insisted Zeftar. "They will know how to fix this." "We tried," replied Vextra. "All messages are rejected. Our ships cannot enter human space. They have sealed themselves away from us completely." "Then we must find another way," said Dr. Mira. "We must learn to maintain their systems ourselves." But 3 months of trying had shown how impossible that was. Human technology was centuries ahead of everyone else's. Their quantum mechanics, their reality manipulation devices, their void barriers, none of it made sense to alien scientists. Engineer Hanul's abandoned research notes were found on a station near the galactic core. The margins were filled with her handwriting. How do we explain to them that reality is not as solid as they think? How do we tell them about the things that swim in the space between spaces? Some knowledge would destroy their peace of mind. The humans had been protecting more than just worlds and trade routes. They had been protecting the other species' innocence, their ability to sleep peacefully at night, not knowing about the horrors that lurked in the dark between stars. As reports came in from across the galaxy, a terrible pattern emerged. Every major benefit that galactic civilization enjoyed, safe trade routes, stable communications, protection from cosmic disasters, had been quietly provided by humans. The Thessian golden age of science had happened because humans prevented the quantum cascade events that previously destroyed advanced civilizations every few thousand years. The Velkari trade empire existed because humans had cleared the space pirates from the major shipping lanes. The peaceful Morphic collective could focus on art and philosophy because humans dealt with the violent realities of protecting their borders. We never asked them to do this, Yildana said during one council session. No, agreed Dr. Mira. They just did it anyway. They saw that we needed protection, and they protected us. They saw that we needed peace, and they gave us peace. They took the dangerous jobs and the sleepless nights so we could have comfortable lives. And we repaid them by calling them dangerous, Zeftar said quietly. The room fell silent. Outside, the galaxy was growing darker and more dangerous every day. The humans were gone, and with them had gone the invisible shield that had protected everyone else. The council finally understood what they had lost. But understanding came too late. The humans had tried to save 200,000 of their own people and been told to wait. Now millions of aliens were dying and there was no one left to save them. The protective silence that humans had maintained for 50 years was broken. And in that silence, ancient evils were beginning to stir. 6 months after humanity's departure, Captain Krelthon stood on the bridge of his warship, staring at empty space where the Nexarian colony of Haven's Rest should have been. His instruments showed nothing. No debris, no radiation, no trace that a world with 3 million people had ever existed. Sir, his navigation officer said, voice shaking. The readings are impossible. According to our sensors, there is no gravity well here, no planet, no asteroid field, nothing. But our charts clearly show— I know what our charts show, Krelthon interrupted. He had seen the colony just 2 weeks ago. A thriving world with cities, farms, spaceports. Now there was only empty space and the distant light of stars. Behind him, his communications officer was trying to reach other Nexarian outposts. No response from Meridian Station, sir, or from New Krylia, or from the mining platforms in the outer belt. 12 colonies. Gone without a trace. The first Void Hunter pack had emerged from dark space 3 days ago. Reality-eating creatures that existed in the spaces between dimensions. They had been humanity's secret enemy for centuries. Without human voidstalkers maintaining the barriers, the hunters were free to feed. Commander Jae-sung's old base was discovered by a Thessian scout ship, abandoned but still functional. The automated defense systems were still running, powered by quantum batteries that would last for decades. Inside, they found his final mission report. Void Hunter Pack designation Alpha 7 eliminated after 48-hour engagement. Casualties, 37 stalkers KIA, including Lieutenant Na Yun and Sergeant Dong Wu. The pack was attempting to establish a feeding ground in the Nexarian outer territories. Barriers holding, but showing stress fractures. Recommend immediate reinforcement of Sector 7 defenses. Note: Void Hunters are adapting to our countermeasures faster than predicted. Request authorization to implement Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega. The Thessian scientists found references to it in other abandoned human bases, but no details. Whatever it was, the humans never got to use it. Dr. Mira received the report while standing in what used to be the bustling Galactic Trade Center on Nexus Prime. Half the docking bays were empty now. Ships were afraid to travel without the human-maintained navigation networks. Trade routes that had been safe for decades were now dangerous passages through unstable space. How many more? She asked her assistant. The Void Hunters hit the Krylian research station at Tau Ceti yesterday. Then they moved on to the Velkari agricultural worlds in the Beta sector. By our count, 17 inhabited systems have been consumed. Consumed. They could not say destroyed because destruction left something behind. The Void Hunters left nothing. They ate space itself, reality itself, leaving holes in the universe where stars and planets had been. The quantum storms were returning too. Without human interference, The massive space-time distortions that had once regularly swept through the galaxy were beginning to manifest again. Engineer Hanuel's research station contained detailed records of storm patterns going back 300 years. Before human intervention, her notes read, quantum storms occurred every 50 to 70 years, rendering entire sectors uninhabitable for decades. We have been redirecting these storms into uninhabited regions of space, but the energy must go somewhere. The storms are getting stronger. Eventually, we will not be able to contain them. Captain Yoon Seo had been working on that problem when the humans left. Her research station near the galactic core contained experimental equipment designed to safely dissipate quantum storm energy. But without her knowledge to operate it, the machinery was useless. The Morphic Collective was the first to try approaching human space directly. Their most advanced ship, carrying a delegation of their greatest minds, reached the barrier around the Sol system and found it impenetrable. This space is no longer accessible to Galactic Council member species, the automated message stated. Please do not attempt further contact. The ship's captain tried every communication frequency, every diplomatic protocol. The response was always the same polite final message. They have cut us off completely, reported Ambassador Drell when the ship returned. The barrier extends around every human system. Our scientists estimate it would take the combined fleets of all remaining species to even scratch it. What about individual humans? Asked Council Leader Vextra. Surely some of them want to help us. Unknown, Drell replied. The barrier blocks all scans. We cannot detect any activity inside human space. They could all be dead, or they could be building something. There is no way to know. But the humans were not dead. Automated cargo ships still launched from human space, carrying medical supplies and emergency equipment to refugee camps. The ships were unmanned and would not respond to communications, but they still helped where they could. It was specialist Min Jung's research that provided the most troubling discovery. Her abandoned laboratory on the edge of Void Hunter territory contained years of data on the creature's behavior patterns. Void Hunters feed on reality by consuming the quantum foundation that holds space-time together, her notes explained. Each feeding makes them stronger and more numerous. They reproduce by fragmenting themselves after consuming sufficient reality mass. Without intervention, a single pack can become a swarm within months. The math was simple and terrifying. Their current rate of expansion, the Void Hunters would consume the entire galaxy within 10 years. Why did they never tell us? Zeftar asked during an emergency council session. If the threat was this serious, why keep it secret? Dr. Mira had found the answer in Admiral Do-hyun's personal files. Council species show panic responses when faced with existential threats beyond their understanding. Previous disclosure attempts resulted in economic collapse, religious wars, and social breakdown. The Krillian revelation of 2387 caused a 50-year dark age. The Thessian Panic of 2401 led to the destruction of their entire space fleet in a futile attempt to flee the galaxy. Some knowledge is too dangerous to share. The humans had been protecting everyone else from despair as much as from actual threats. They had shouldered the burden of knowledge so that other species could focus on art, science, trade, and all the things that made life worth living. Now that knowledge was forced upon unprepared minds, and the results were exactly what the humans had feared. The Velkari trade empire collapsed as merchants refused to leave their home systems. The Thessian Science Institute shut down all deep space research. The Krillian Dominion recalled their entire military to defend their core worlds. Fear paralyzed the galaxy just when unity was most needed. On the edge of human space, automated monitoring stations continued their lonely vigil. Commander Jae-sung's old unit had left behind hundreds of sensor platforms, each one programmed to watch for Void Hunter activity and warn any ships in the area. The warnings came constantly now. Void Hunter presence detected in Sector 9, all. Ships evacuate immediately, reality distortion increasing. Recommend immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance. But there were no human voidstalkers left to respond to the warnings. No elite units like Lieutenant Nayan's squad to intercept the hunters before they could establish feeding grounds. The automated systems could warn, but they could not fight. Dr. Mira stood in her laboratory, surrounded by human technology that she barely understood. Outside her window, refugees from the consumed worlds were arriving in ships that barely held together. The lucky ones who had escaped before the Void Hunters erased their homes from existence. "There has to be something we can do," she said to her assistant. "Some way to reach them, some way to ask for help." "Ma'am," her assistant replied quietly, "even if we could contact them, why would they help us? We called them dangerous. We let their people die while we debated procedures. We drove them away." Mira had no answer for that. The humans had protected the galaxy for 3 centuries, asking nothing in return. When they finally needed help, the Council had failed them. When they finally asked for acceptance, they had been rejected. Now the galaxy was paying the price for that failure. The protective silence that humans had maintained was broken, and in that silence, ancient hungers were stirring. Things that should have remained sleeping in the dark between stars were awakening to feed. The barriers were failing, the storms were returning, the hunters were spreading, and humanity was gone. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy was dying. Captain Krelthon stood in the ruins of what had once been the Nexarian Empire's greatest shipyard, watching as reality itself flickered and warped around him. The Void Hunters had fed here 3 days ago, and space had not yet recovered from their feast. "Sir," his lieutenant said, voice muffled by the emergency breathing apparatus they all wore now. "The quantum readings are still unstable. We should not stay here long." Krelthon nodded but did not move. Somewhere in this twisted space, his daughter's ship had been caught when the hunters arrived. The Stellar Wind, a cargo vessel carrying medical supplies to refugee camps. The ship, its crew, and its cargo had simply ceased to exist when the Void Hunters fed. "Any word from the other fleets?" he asked. "The Thessians lost another colony. Ship yesterday. The Krillian defense fleet, there is no defense fleet anymore, sir. Admiral Zorax's last transmission said they were falling back to their home system. 12 species had once ruled the galaxy. Now only 6 governments remained, functional. The rest had either been consumed by the Void Hunters or collapsed under the weight of threats they could not understand." Krelthon pulled up the galactic map on his wrist computer. Red zones marked areas where reality was unstable. Yellow zones showed regions abandoned due to quantum storms. Green zones indicated systems still considered safe. The green zones were shrinking every day. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Kepler Void. It's human." Krelthon's heart jumped. "Open the channel." But it was not a live transmission. It was a recording, broadcast automatically, from an abandoned structure floating in the empty space between stars. The image showed a massive memorial wall covered in names, thousands upon thousands of them. "Memorial Station Omega," a computerized voice announced. "Dedicated to the 50,000 members of the human Voidstalker Corps who gave their lives protecting the galaxy between the years 2387 and 2442. The names scrolled by in neat rows. Captain Du-hyun, who died holding off a hunter pack at Rigel. Lieutenant Na-yun, killed defending a Velkari colony ship. Commander Sung-ho, who sacrificed himself to seal a reality breach that would have consumed an entire star system. They never knew we died for them, the memorial inscription read. Perhaps it's better that way. Krelthon found himself crying as he watched the names scroll past. 50,000 humans had died fighting monsters that the galaxy never knew existed. 50,000 heroes whose names had never been spoken in council chambers. "Sir," his lieutenant whispered, "look at the dates." The death toll had been accelerating. In recent years, human casualties had increased dramatically. The Void Hunters were getting stronger, smarter, more aggressive. The humans had been losing the war, even before they left. On Thessia Prime, Dr. Mira was making her own horrifying discoveries. The Krillian Dominion had attempted to reverse engineer abandoned human technology, hoping to build their own defenses against the Hunters. Their greatest scientists had spent months studying a single human quantum barrier generator. "The device operates on principles that we do not understand," the lead researcher reported. "It appears to manipulate the fundamental structure of reality itself." Our best estimate is that it would take our civilization 3,000 years to develop this level of technology, assuming we could even comprehend the underlying physics. Dr. Haiyan Wu's research notes provided some clues, but they were written in mathematical formulas that hurt to look at. Reality manipulation required an understanding of how existence itself functioned, knowledge that human scientists had spent centuries developing. The void exists in the spaces between what is and what is not, one of his papers explained. To fight creatures that exist in non-existence, one must learn to exist in non-existence as well. This is not a technology that can be taught. It must be lived, experienced, understood at a level that changes the very nature of the observer. The Krillian research team had tried to activate just one human barrier generator. The attempt had created a quantum cascade that erased their entire research facility from existence. 73 of their best scientists simply stopped being. Meanwhile, the pattern of destruction was becoming clear. Every major galactic civilization had been utterly dependent on human protection, though they had never realized it. The Thessian golden age of peaceful exploration had happened because humans cleared the space pirates from the trade routes. Captain Boram's security logs showed hundreds of pirate fleets destroyed by human patrol ships over the past 50 years, ships that attacked merchant vessels in supposedly empty space, only to find human warships waiting for them. The Velkari trade empire existed because humans had prevented the quantum cascade events that previously wiped out advanced civilizations every few millennia. Engineer Hanul's storm redirection systems had quietly diverted cosmic disasters away from populated areas for decades. The Morphic Collective's peaceful philosophical development had been possible because humans dealt with the violent realities of galactic security. Commander Jae-sung's voidstalker units had eliminated threats that would have driven the peaceful aliens to madness. "We were their shield," Admiral Do-hyun had written in his final report. They could focus on building beautiful things because we focused on destroying terrible things. They could sleep peacefully because we stayed awake in the dark. Now the dark was full of hungry things, and there was no one left to keep watch. The quantum storms returned with a vengeance. Without human interference, massive space-time distortions swept through inhabited systems like cosmic hurricanes. The storms did not destroy worlds directly, but they made space travel impossible and cut off entire sectors from outside contact. The Morphic Collective found themselves trapped in their home system as quantum storms raged around them. Their peaceful philosophers, who had spent generations contemplating the beauty of existence, were forced to watch reality itself twist and break outside their windows. "We understand now," their message to the remaining council members said. "We understand what the humans carried for us. The weight of knowledge that could crush spirits, the burden of standing guard against nightmares. We are not strong enough for this knowledge. We were never strong enough." As more species fell to the returning threats, the few survivors began to understand the true scope of humanity's sacrifice. Every human colony ship that had departed over the centuries had not been searching for new homes. They had been mapping and neutralizing galactic threats, creating safe corridors for species that would never know their names. The worthless systems that humans had claimed were actually strategic positions, buffer zones between inhabited space and the dark regions where ancient evils slept. Early warning posts that watched for signs of cosmic disasters. Research stations where human scientists studied threats too dangerous to face without preparation. Captain Yoon Seo's abandoned monitoring station in the void contained records going back 300 years. Her people had been tracking void hunter movements, predicting their feeding patterns and intercepting them before they could reach inhabited worlds. Pack Alpha 12 destroyed after 72-hour engagement, one report read. Hunters were 3 days from reaching the Thessian colony of New Athens. All 2.3 million inhabitants evacuated to secure locations under cover story of solar maintenance. Colony saved. Casualties: 15 stalkers KIA, including Sergeant Mi Young and Corporal Tae Ho. The humans had been dying to save people who never knew they were in danger. They had been creating cover stories to hide the true nature of the threats they faced. They had been protecting not just lives, but peace of mind. "Some knowledge is too heavy," Captain Do-hyun had written. Some truths would break the spirits of good people. We carry the darkness so they can live in the light. Dr. Mira stood in her laboratory, surrounded by human technology that represented centuries of accumulated knowledge. Knowledge gained through sacrifice, through loss, through the deaths of heroes whose names would never be remembered. Outside her window, the last refugee ships were departing Thessia Prime. The quantum storms were approaching, and the planet would soon be cut off from the rest of the galaxy. She would stay trying to understand human science until the end. We failed them, she said to her empty laboratory. They protected us for 3 centuries, and when they needed us just once, we failed them. The memorial station's broadcast continued to loop in empty space, honoring 50,000 human heroes. The message was simple and heartbreaking. They never knew we died for them. Perhaps it's better that way. But now the galaxy knew, and that knowledge had come too late to save anyone. 2 years after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Council met for the last time. Only 4 representatives remained in the vast chamber that had once held 12 species. The others were gone, consumed by void hunters, lost to quantum storms, or simply collapsed under the weight of threats they could not comprehend. Dr. Mira sat in the Thessian chair, her hair now white from the stress of the past 2 years. Captain Krelthon represented what remained of the Nexarian Empire, though that was only 3 systems now. The Morphic Collective had sent their eldest philosopher, and the Velkari Trade Union was represented by a single frightened merchant. "Is there any word from the outer territories?" Mira asked. "Nothing," Krelthon replied. "The last transmission from Sector 7 was 3 days ago. Reality storms, they said, before the signal cut out." The chamber fell silent. Through the great windows, they could see refugee ships departing Nexus Prime. The capital of galactic civilization was being abandoned as the quantum barriers around the system began to fail. "There is something we should see," the Morphic representative said quietly. "We found it in the Council archives yesterday. A sealed message from Ambassador Taymin. It was programmed to activate only when our membership fell below half." The hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. Ambassador Taymin stood there as he had 2 years ago, calm and dignified in his dark diplomatic robes. But now they could see the sadness in his eyes, the weight he had carried. "If you are watching this," his recorded image said, "then the galaxy has learned what we protected you from. I am sorry. We never wanted you to face this knowledge. We never wanted you to know about the things that hunt in the dark between stars." Mira felt tears on her cheeks. The human ambassador continued speaking, his voice gentle and kind even in this final message. "We never sought gratitude, only acceptance. When our children died in the Rigel crisis while you debated our worthiness, we understood that we would always be outsiders. We cannot protect those who see us as the threat." The hologram gestured and images appeared around him. Human monitoring stations scattered throughout the galaxy. Voidstalker units engaged in desperate battles. Engineers working alone in distant systems to maintain barriers that kept cosmic horrors at bay. "For 3 centuries, we have stood guard. We have died in silence so that you could live in peace. We have carried the burden of terrible knowledge so that you could focus on beautiful things. We built our colonies in the dangerous places, the cursed places, the places where ancient evils sleep because someone had to stand watch." Captain Krelthon leaned forward in his chair. "Every human expansion request," he whispered. "They were taking the dangerous territories. Every system we claimed was a buffer zone," Taymin's image confirmed as if he had heard. "Every research station was an early warning post. Every mining operation was actually a monitoring facility. We told you they were profitable ventures because you would not have understood the true purpose." The images changed, showing human ships engaged in battles against creatures that hurt to look at. Reality itself seemed to bend and break around the void hunters as human stalkers fought them with weapons that operated on principles no other species understood. "We lost 50,000 soldiers keeping you safe," Taymin continued. "Heroes like Captain Cho Hyun, who held off a hunter pack for 6 hours while the Thessian colony ship New Dawn evacuated 30,000 civilians. Lieutenant Nayun, who sacrificed herself to seal a reality breach that would have consumed the Velkari home system. Commander Sung Ho, who died alone in the void. destroying a quantum storm that would have made the Krillian territories uninhabitable for 1,000 years. Dr. Mira was sobbing now. Each name was a reminder of how much the galaxy had lost, how much it had never appreciated. They never knew we died for them, Taman said. Perhaps it was better that way. Some knowledge is too heavy for peaceful hearts to bear. The images shifted again, showing the construction of massive barriers around human space, fleets of human ships working together to build defenses that no other species could penetrate. The barriers around human space will hold for 1,000 years, Taman explained. We will rebuild, grow strong, and perhaps one day return to a galaxy that has learned the difference between strength and malice. We hope you survive long enough to see that day. They're still alive, the Velkari representative whispered. They haven't abandoned us completely. But Taman's next words crushed that hope. We will not intervene again. We cannot save those who do not wish to be saved. We cannot protect those who fear us more than they fear the darkness. The galaxy must learn to stand on its own, or it must fall. The message began to conclude, but Taman had one final revelation to share. Every human colony ship that departed over the centuries was part of our mission, not to spread humanity, but to spread protection. We mapped the dark territories, identified the threats, built monitoring networks in places too dangerous for others to go. We created safe corridors between your worlds, cleared the space pirates from your trade routes, and eliminated the cosmic predators that would have hunted your species to extinction. The hologram showed a map of the galaxy. Thousands of red dots marked human outposts, forming a protective network that surrounded every major civilization. Buffer zones, early warning systems, and monitoring stations that had kept the galaxy safe for centuries. Each station bears the same inscription, Taman said. For those who will never know we were here, Dr. Mira understood now. The humans had built their entire civilization around protecting others. Every colony, every research station, every mining operation had been part of a vast defensive network. They had made themselves the galaxy's immune system, fighting off threats that would have destroyed everyone else. We are leaving now, Taman concluded. But our automated systems will continue to function for as long as possible. Medical supplies will still be delivered to refugee camps. Warning beacons will still alert you to immediate dangers. Emergency shelters will still activate when quantum storms approach. Even in leaving, we try to help. The message ended, but the Chamber's computer announced that additional files were available. Personnel records, technical manuals, and detailed histories of every threat the humans had faced. They're giving us their knowledge, Krelthon said. Everything they learned, everything they discovered, they're trying to help us survive. But as Dr. Mira reviewed the files, her heart sank. The information was impossibly complex. Reality manipulation, void combat, quantum storm redirection. These were sciences that required centuries to master, technologies that changed the very nature of those who use them. We cannot learn this fast enough, she said. By the time we understand even the basics, the galaxy will be gone. As if to confirm her words, reports came in from across the remaining inhabited systems. The Void Hunters were accelerating their expansion. Without human interference, they had grown from scattered packs to coordinated swarms. The quantum storms were intensifying, cutting off entire regions of space. Reality itself was becoming unstable as ancient cosmic cycles resumed their natural patterns. The last Council ships prepared to evacuate Nexus Prime. As they departed, they passed through a debris field of abandoned human monitoring stations. Each one bore the same inscription in dozens of languages, for those who will never know we were here. Dr. Mira sat in her ship, reading through human technical manuals that described technologies beyond her comprehension. Around her, the last remnants of galactic civilization fled toward the rim, hoping to find some corner of space where they could hide from the returning darkness. We called them dangerous, she said to her assistant. We said they grew too fast, learned too quickly, advanced too rapidly. We never realized they were growing strong to protect us. They were learning quickly because they had to. They were advancing rapidly because the threats they faced were getting worse. Her assistant nodded. What will we do now? Mira looked out at the stars, knowing that many of them would soon be consumed by entities that ate light itself. We learn, we survive, we remember, and maybe, someday, we become worthy of their protection again. The barriers around human space pulsed with energy that would last for a millennium. Inside, humanity was rebuilding, growing stronger, preparing for whatever came next. They had saved themselves, but they could not save the galaxy that had rejected them. Outside those barriers, the darkness was spreading. The void hunters fed freely, reality storms raged unchecked, and the few survivors huddled in their ships, finally understanding what protection had cost. The galaxy had learned the difference between strength and malice. It had learned the price of rejecting those who stood guard in the dark. It had learned that some knowledge was indeed too heavy for peaceful hearts to bear, and it had learned these lessons far too late. The stars went out one by one, consumed by hungry shadows that should have remained sleeping. The galaxy fell into darkness, and the last survivors finally understood what they had lost when humanity left without a word. The protection that had been freely given for 3 centuries could never be rebuilt. The trust that had been broken could never be repaired. The guardians who had died in silence would never return. The galaxy was learning to stand on its own, but it was learning while already falling.